Morning folks, Danny Gaskell here. Due to popular request from Mr. Hoffman, amongst others at the BFFI, I'm going to actually put a video on, the first video of using the Gaskell fly glue. Okay, because it seems like some of you are struggling out there with the basic technique. Some people are absolutely flying with it, and some people are struggling to get a grip of it. So first things first, I want to show you a bottle of the glue. So this is what we're talking about with the backwards name on it. Lovely. So do you all read backwards? You do backwards? Yeah? Do you listen to it? You remember the end of record players? Do you listen to that bit backwards? Yeah. So you're believing the devil. Great. So this is the glue. Now what I've started doing to prolong the life is I've started filling it up and getting all the air out of the bottle. Okay, to prolong the life of the glue, because it sets by absorbing moisture out of the air. And if you get air in the bottle, it will always set quicker. So always try and get air out of the bottle if you can, okay? And get the cap fitting as tight as possible. Now I've also capped them inside now, something I've started doing recently, which also prolongs the life of the glue. So let's have a look. So the first thing you do when you get the glue is you need to take off the lid, the nozzle, and then you'll find some description of cap inside that you need to remove. Okay, so there's the cap. So now for the first time you're exposing it to air. Can put the nozzle back on. Put the nozzle back on. Now then, when it comes to actually cutting off the nozzle, what you need to do, it's got a very thin bit at the top and then it starts to fatten out. If you cut it too far down the bit that fattens out, you won't be able to get the actual cap on that comes attached to the bottle, because this needs to slip on the top, and this is what's going to stop the air getting back in. Okay, so you need to cut it usually about sort of 5mm below where it starts to thicken out. Okay, so if I just show you that now, get down about 5mm below that section, snip it off there, and because I was squeezing it, a little bit of the darling stuff came out, and that means later you should have a good tight fit with the cap. If your cap is a bit loose still, you can actually cut it slightly further down, but once you've cut too much off, you're in trouble. Okay, so err on the side of not cutting enough off, because you can always work your way down and cut a bit more off later. Alright, so that's the first thing about the glue. But remember, the glue will last a certain amount of time, because as you're using it, you're getting air in the bottle, and it depends how much moisture in the air, if you're working on it in humid conditions, you know. So it's going to last a different amount of time depending how much you use it, what the conditions are like. But the rule of thumb is always squeeze all the air out of the bottle and then cap it as tight as you can and make sure it doesn't suck air back in. So keeping the air out of the bottle is key to this. However, it has got a shelf life, and probably after you buy it, depending on how quick you buy it from the supplier, you're probably going to only have a few months to use it in. Okay, depending how much you use it, like I said. But it's not something that's going to last for years on the shelf at home. Okay, especially if you've used it once and you've got some air in the bottle. So bear that in mind. Okay, there we go. Tying an ant, a self-floating ant that requires no floatant, with Gaskell Everfloat fly glue. Okay, we've got the hook. This is a 16, and the first thing you need to do is to put a wrap on. So just going to put a wrap down the hook. Now I don't want any of you lot out there dropping me emails and calling me up and telling me what a crap fly time I am, because I am fairly new to the game and I'm here for a specific reason, which is to show you how to use this glue, not to teach you how to tie flies and show you impeccable technique, because I am self-taught and I'm sure that I do loads of horrible things. Anyway, there you go, we're putting a wrap on. So take it about yay long, which for our purposes today will be fine, and then just a little spiral back again, leaves a kind of rough finish on it, which is what you want, because what this wrap is doing is it's stopping the glue. It's doing two things. One thing is it stops the glue just being on the bare metal where it tends to run about too much, and two, it it allows you to just wet the wrap a little bit, because that's what actually makes the fly go off, makes the glue go off quicker. Okay, because it reacts with the water. That's what makes this glue bubble and go off, is it actually reacts to the moisture in the atmosphere, and you can speed that up by actually applying a little bit of moisture to the wrap itself, so that it, you know, it's actually, the whole process is speeded up a little bit. So I am now going to just dampen that. You don't want to really make it soaking, you don't want the water running around everywhere, but you just want to make sure that the wraps have actually, the water's soaked through that wrap. Okay, now then, let's clean the top off this. But every time you open the bottle, you basically need to, which is what I'm doing now, out of shot, is to basically just clean a little bit of the gunge off the top of the bottom again. So let's have a go. So here we go. You need to just basically support your hand, and you're going to put a drop on the front, I'm going to immediately spin that over just to get it moving so it doesn't sag too much, and then you put in a drop on the back. It doesn't matter if you put too much on or too little, because you're going to use what is going to become your basic tool. Now you see there how that's actually centralising itself. When I put them two blobs on, they weren't actually dead centre, they were sort of hanging off one side, weren't they? But now they actually sort of self-centre themselves. I'm actually going to take a little bit of that off, because I think that's a little bit too much. So you can see there, just with the end of a needle, how you can actually move the stuff around. The other thing I'm going to do is just spread it up the back there, because it makes it look slightly more abdomen shaped if you spread it around a bit. So that front bit that's basically going to be the head can kind of stay that sort of round shape, and it'll draw into a sort of little ball. The one on the back, I like to just make it slightly elongated so it looks more like a real abdomen. The difference that makes to the fish, probably zero. There you go. We don't just do it for the fish, do we? Some of us don't do it for the fish at all, if you look at some of the patterns. It's an end in itself. Not that that's true for eye. In fact, I have no feelings whatsoever about fishing the ugliest thing that ever went on the end of a line, if it'll pull me a trout out. Right. And we all know what they'll feed at. I mean, how many of us have been fishing and we've caught a couple of trout on a fly and kept going with that same fly, and it's the most battered, ripped up thing that you've ever thrown in the water, and yet we're still fishing with it because it's still working. We're not taking it off and swapping it for another one, which makes you wonder, doesn't it? Okay, right, back to the process in hand. See them basically spinning it round. It helps a lot here having a vise that, if you're going to use this glue, an on-axis vise, or at least one that's easy to spin round, because spinning it is all kind of part of what you're doing. Okay, you basically, the basic technique is a combination of spinning, and moving with the needle. You see all them air bubbles that are forming now? You should be able to see nice bunches of air bubbles forming in there. And that, folks, is pretty much it. That's how easy it is to make an ant, at least the body part of it. I need to spin this now for probably another, like, you see I'm spinning it less and less now as it starts to go off. Now, just one more tip. What you want to do is, you see it's settling there, so it's that way. You want it to finish in that shape. don't let it settle too much and finish with it hanging down, because otherwise it closes the gape and it's harder to set your hook. So your final set wants to look something like that now, about that position where most of it is above the hook, not into the gape. All right, so just remember that when you actually you know, letting it set into the shape that you want, because a lot of this shape is actually governed by your spinning of this vise. Okay, so the front one's virtually gone and the back one needs about 1 more minute, and I'm going to leave it there till we do the next stage. Thank you very much. Okay, so now that's gone off, you can simply well, one thing I usually do is once it's actually gone off, after about sort of 10 or 15 minutes, instead of just leaving it to dry, I actually just dump it in some water. Once it's gone about 20 minutes, it won't bubble. You have to be careful. If you throw it in water too soon, it reacts so quickly with the water, you'll suddenly get a big bubble or jump out the side where it's still reacting. But after about sort of 15-20 minutes, I dump them in water while I do, and you can carry on. And that really sets the outside then. Now, one thing is that you've noticed you really need, it's handy to have a second vise so you can carry on with something else, so you can leave this in the vise while it's going off. Either that, or you can just take it out and put it somewhere else to dry. If you've got one of those little rotators, you can actually make a few and I'll add them to the rotator as it's going round and leave quite a number of these things drying. So there's different things you can do. If you've only got one vise, you don't really want to just sit there looking at it, and waiting half an hour for it to dry in the vise, before you can get on with anything else, because that's kind of a waste of your fly tying time. So you need to organise yourself so that you can leave these somewhere as they're going off, while you carry on with something else. Either have a second vise where you carry on working on that and then come back to this, or take it out and let it dry somewhere else. Now, I'm actually going to colour this one, although it's an ant. I'm actually going to take a bit of artistic license, and I'm going to colour the abdomen in dark brown, and I'm going to make the head red. A bit of red on a fly is often very successful for me. So this is a permanent marker, and you can use any permanent marker that you want. I'm going to use a Sharpie, but Pro markers are very good. And you'll notice that it just takes colour very well. You just basically colour it in. You need something with a fairly fine point. You don't want to go getting the you don't really want to go getting the marker on the other where you don't want it. And you don't have to have this on marker. I mean, sometimes I do this, I actually just grab it in a pair of pliers instead, but it's hard for you to focus on that, seeing as you're actually looking at a video. So I'm going to do this one in the vise, but it's often a little bit quicker if you do it in a pair of pliers. And if you want it darker, you just go over it again. In about 5 minutes it sets very quickly, this permanent marker stuff. If you do slip as well, these permanent markers are good at covering each other's colours up. Now then, you can see how nice and smooth that body is there. Yeah, gives a nice smooth finish, and all them air bubbles are trapped in. And this is a fully floating fly. It floats already. I've tested it after doing, which I always do, because if you don't quite put enough on, then it won't float. And the other really important thing, like it mentions in the instructions that I give out with the glue, is you must use the lightest hooks, okay, by Vass or Partridge. If you don't, it's no good using a big wanging heavy hook, because you'll have to put so much glue on it that it'll never float. So always use the lightest hooks you can get. Now let's do the head in red for a little bit of fun, just to show you that it takes bright colours as well, really, as much as anything else. I probably wouldn't normally do this. I usually go for just standard black, but I've done a very dark brown on this occasion, and I'm going to do red for the head. So you can see how well, actually look on the video, it looks kind of pink, but it's not. In reality that is a very, very bright red, I assure you. So you can see how well it takes colour. It takes it solidly all the way over, and you can deepen it by say waiting a few minutes and then just going over it all again and layering it all up. So there's your little self-floating amp. It's very tough. It's a lot tougher than using foam. It's self-floating, so you can please yourself if you want. You don't have to put a hackle on it. It'll self-float. If you put a hackle on it, it'll float very high, unless you let the hackle get wet while you're fishing it, rather than put floating on it, in which case it'll sit really low in the film. Or you can just put legs on, you know. And I think I'm going to hackle this one in a little bit of grizzle. So let's get ready for doing that. So I'm going to put a bit of grizzly hackle on this. So I'm going to start off just tying it in on the front. And reach in there and just trim that off. And there she is. A little red-headed ant there. Now, like I said before, the you don't need to hackle it. You can sparse hackle it, you can heavy hackle it, you can do what you want with it really, because it's already floating. So you can please yourself what you do with it and how you fish it, safe in the knowledge that this is going to float no matter what you do. Okay, so for all of you that were wondering how to use the glue, there's the first video that I'm going to post, which is making an ant, and I hope that helps everybody that's been having a little bit of a struggle. Thank you very much. I think the next one I'll do, if I get some good feedback from this, is I'll show you how to do a body. Bye.